Hello and welcome back to Rose Chronicles. We're going to do something a little different today. I have been writing for the past week and a bit, really just diving into understanding life and specific areas and patterns within my lineage that I wanted to come on here and just start reading what I'm writing. And also, guys, you can take a look in the description. I don't know if I'll have anything there this time because I was just listening to frequency music as I was writing this one, but I'll have some songs listed there of ones that I was listening to while writing. So feel free to put that soundtrack on or listen to that song while you listen to this podcast. Don't feel that you have to sit here and watch the video. By all means, strap on some headphones and do your thing, whatever it is that you're doing. Maybe you're walking, maybe you're watching outside, maybe you're making a coffee. You're just living life. So here we go. We're going to focus on frustration. As you know, I'm a firm believer that every word has a frequency, and that frequency is based on our experiences, our perceptions of life. The minute that we are conceived all the way to now, and it's not even just ours, it's our lineage, it's our moms and our dads, our grandparents, our great grandparents, our great great grandparents, and so on. It's our relatives. If you're like, well, I didn't know my biological mom or father, well, you still had that energy, but you're also holding on to the energy of adoptive parents because we adapt from our perception, from our experiences with that relationship. We'll adapt specific habits, understandings of the world. So let's dive into it. Frustration. What is it, and how do we overcome this state of being? This state of being, it consumes our mind, our emotions, our bodies all at once. At face value, what creates frustration is a specific goal or an image that we have set for ourselves that is unrealistic. And chronic frustration just means that we have this unrealistic goal or self-image that is inadequate at this time in many areas of our life. You just can't get anything right. You know that response? Or, everything's going to shit and we're in this like, and our body is tense. The stories that we're telling ourselves is just running on autopilot and creating this ripple effect in our emotions. Our emotions create that tenseness in our body. So it's this feeling of something not being as attainable as we had perceived it to be, a person not being or acting in a way that we have perceived them to be or envisioned them to be, a way in which we envisioned a goal or setting into motion only to feel failure in some aspect or to feel that we haven't been able to achieve it. We're constantly grasping for it. And we always feel like something is in the way and we can never get to it. So there's this frustrated feeling that comes over us. Where can we find frustration? Literally everywhere. Chronic frustration, chronic frustration means that we are in a response to life that feels dissatisfying. We point fingers at another or a situation that is out of our control, and yet we blame them for our feelings of displeasure and disappointment. As a parent, and this is coming from me, know that this is all coming from my perception, but yet my understanding with clients, with family. But as parents, we elicit frustration when our child doesn't do or respond in a way that would have us feeling better. And don't tell me you haven't been there because we've all been there. So whether you're asking for help, telling them what to do, or envisioning a specific outcome to a situation, we're going at it from a place of this is who I am in this situation, and this is how it would resolve itself in a way that feels good for me. Not for everybody involved. We're coming from a place of this is who I am, and this is how it would be resolved that feels good for me, because we avoid, well, what if, it went this way? Sometimes we come from that place, but typically when it comes to our kids, we don't go into, well, this is, like this is what will cause friction. We'll come from a place of this is how I feel it should go. So this is how it's going to be. So we don't factor in that the child in the situation is living through free will just as much as we are. Let me repeat that. We do not factor in that our child is living through free will just as much as you are. Therefore, they will respond on their own accord. They have control of their response. And during this time, when they initiate their response, it will either match what you had envisioned or they will respond differently, creating frustration. The need for control of a situation going out the window. I laugh because I've been there, and I laugh because I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. I've been there. I've gotten frustrated because I don't feel control of that situation. And what I envisioned literally like just flew out the window. I cannot even grasp it anymore. It's almost like it catches you off balance. And it's like having that safety of that vision being toppled over. That safety, you feel like there's no safety net there, right? It's that surprise aspect, the way in which you yourself wanted it to be resolved being set up in flames. It's just like, if your child had the match and there was a bonfire behind them and they just lit it and walked away, like, and that's what I think of that. And you're kind of just like, oh my goodness. And you're in that state of frustration of like, how do I control that fire that they just lit? And there it is. It's your desire to be in control. So what's creating that within you? Sorry, I had something in my eye. Okay. It's our inability, at the end of the day, it is our inability to factor in other scenarios and other outcomes from a place of being the observer, not from a place of I need to know all the outcomes in the scenarios in order to be prepared, in order to be in control. We have this tunnel vision into one specific outcome and the desire to have the other individual or situation go the way you choose for it to go, a way that flows well for you. And yet we're not factoring in that all of us come from this space at one point or another, especially our children. So let's break it down even more. I'll use my own family, for example. This will be fun. So I have a son that's soon to be 9 years old, a recent 15-year-old, and a 43-year-old. Haha, just kidding. That's my spouse. I don't really think he's a child, but also sometimes I'm a child. So moving on. We also have a cat and a dog, and we all get up roughly around the same time. Lately, our days run really smooth. Nothing really throws a wrench into our mornings. However, let me give you two examples of how frustration could be created. Okay, let's say for the first one, I have an appointment that I need to be out of the house for by a specific time. So in my head, I know the logistics from my perspective of how the morning will go and need to run in order to make it to this appointment on time. So I get up and I go downstairs and I pour myself a coffee. Now, I have set my machine so that it turns on at a specific time. And by the time I'm downstairs, I've brushed my teeth because I brush my teeth before I have my coffee, right? And I let my dog out, it's already running. So when I'm ready to grab that first cup, it's there. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to put my grounds into the coffee maker at the beginning of the morning. It's already percolating. So here I am. I'm prepared for that, right? However, the power must have gone off during the night because the machine is turned off. So I flip it on, take the dog out because he seems to be more just. And so I take the dog out. He seems to be a lot more distracted than he usually is when we're out there. He must be smelling chipmunks, extra ones at that. And it takes more than usual coaxing to get him back inside. So by then, I'm just slightly, the heat's turned up just a little bit in my body, right? So once there, I grab my blanket for sitting outside and my journal because that's what I do in the morning. And I go and I sit outside for my morning ritual. But I forget my coffee. So then I have to go back inside. Thinking in my head, it's okay. You know, there's only so much time left before the kids get up and my hubby does, but this is okay, right? I've got this. I've got more than enough time. This is me telling myself this, convincing myself this. But in words, my body is getting a little bit more heated. So I go back outside and realize I forgot my pen because I bring my journal outside. So I have to go back in. So here I am. I'm not, I'm telling myself that I'm not becoming frustrated, but I know I am because I'm already in this like I already have envisioned myself sitting down by now and having my me time before the rest of the house wakes up again. So my usual hour has turned back into 40 minutes as opposed to the hour I would have gotten already because of all the things that have happened. So then when it is time, it takes another 15 minutes to get my son up out of bed. And usually he's like up and raring to go, but today he wants to sleep in. He doesn't get up for another 15 minutes. Thankfully, my daughter is 15. She gets up, she does her stuff. Perfect peachy, no problem. But I also know my son is a slower paced individual in the mornings. Rushing him gets us nowhere. You guessed it, it gets him frustrated. Now, he is high functioning autistic. He does amazing. He makes his own breakfast. He sits down, but it's the internal dialogue he's got going on, right? So, you know, in his world, he is in the Transformers land or he's in Lego land. So it's very much about, calmly reminding him that we only have a certain amount of time, especially if he wants to play with his toys before he goes. So here he is, he's starting to reach his boiling point, also feeding off of my energy because we all feel energy. So become aware of, again, the kettle within me is beginning to boil even more. And I'm feeling my body tense and my breath is becoming shallow. My spouse is also late for work and has to drop off my son at school. So now I'm helping him navigate his things while he's living in frustration of the lateness that he put on himself. And yet is grumpy responding to everybody else for, you guessed it, himself being late. So my son needing those few reminders of getting ready. They're finally at the door and I have 10 minutes now to get ready and go. Unrealistic expectations that led me to frustration because I expected my house to respond a certain way. But I also recognize that I have set unrealistic expectations for myself as the one who does it all and can be the only one who could smooth out the mornings. So let's not get into that part. Let's dive back into, because I haven't finished, I haven't left the house yet. So here I am 10 minutes beforehand and I spilled my second cup of coffee on the shirt that I was supposed to be wearing to this appointment. So I don't know about you, but I was feeling kind of warm talking about this, and it was just an example. Let me know in the comments how much this resonated for you, because I know a lot of parents that this resonates. So let's go to the next example. I want you guys all to just feel whatever comes up for you when I say this. groceries. If you've got kids at home, if you've got a spouse at home, you know that this word, there is a mixed feeling when it comes to groceries. It might be financial, but it also could be this. Here we go. Groceries. The situation of when you come home after doing groceries and realize that the other things that were not included in the list that your family has run out of. In fact, it's been about 24 hours after groceries has been completed, and you find out your kids have run out of toothpaste. And yet there is this overwhelming frustration because you know there is a place for your kids and your spouse to add items to the grocery list throughout the week. First of all, let's be honest, it's an unrealistic expectation to think that they all operate from the same mental space that you do. So it is an unrealistic expectation for me to assume that they operate from the exact same mental space that I do. We come from an assumption that they would know where to add the items and that it is effortless to do so. And yet we do not factor in the way in which our children and our spouse's minds are operating at that time. Maybe my daughter is having a rough week at school. Maybe with her group of friends, or maybe one of her friends is having some type of crisis throughout the week and she's helping her navigate it. So she's really engrossed in supporting this friend. Anyone with a teenage daughter can understand that. Or that my spouse, for example, has a very squirrel mindset. And I'm not doing that to poke at him, but sometimes he does. He has a squirrel mindset. So at times when it comes to hunger, he forgets to write down things that he has run out of while he's sifting through the pantry for something else. So it's my frustration and my internal stories within me creating the feeling of frustration, a self-image and a story of others that they are creating within me. Why is that helping or help? Why is that happening? Not helping, but I guess it is helping at the same time to create this frustration within me. So here's why. Because in that moment, I'm telling myself that I am not thought of. My time is valuable and it's not respected by others. These are the stories that I'm telling myself. That the kids and the spouse just feel I have all the time in the world to run out and grab things during the week. Ever hear that from your mom or your dad or a parent? Have you heard that come out of your own mouth? Oh, you must assume that I have all this time in order to do this. And it's really not that. It's actually that they just have their own minds and thoughts that are going on just like you do. So maybe there is a little bit of truth to it, but who created that mindset in them? I did. You did. I also created that self-image that tells a story that I am the only one who could go out and get those things, that it was up to me. Unrealistic expectations of myself, an unrealistic image of self. And when we dive into how this is created by our parents growing up and their roles in the family, as well as the grandparents and the great grandparents and the great great grandparents, sometimes it is just that, a habitual pattern that we have created around frustration that is just a part of us. How fucking exhausting. Let's be real. When you feel frustrated, do you feel energized? Or do you feel frustrated? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel like you want to hide in a hole or go on vacation by yourself? So, backtracking. This is all about truth. So I set an unrealistic expectation of my family to assume that everyone would have the same effortless response to using the grocery list. But maybe it is easier for my daughter to text me throughout the week to give me a heads up on something that she's running out of. Not that we don't talk during the week, but sometimes when we see each other, it's just us having a conversation and things go out the window. I forget too, as the parent. So being open to communication and resolution that works for everyone creates flow and removes the burden of frustration. Removes the habit and the pattern that we create subconsciously within us. What I'm saying is that we choose how we respond to our life and to the people around us. We are in control of that. And to respond from a place of frustration is telling ourselves that something is not working. Something is out of our control that we are desperately feeling the need to subconsciously have control over. So, where in your life have you felt a lack of control when it comes to your family unit, when it comes to finances, when it comes to your own self-image? Just something to ponder. Let's dive further. I'm going to give you another example. And this has to do with goals. Oh my, I hope you guys didn't hear that. I totally burped. I've been fasting and then I had my brunch and now I'm digesting. You're welcome. Okay. Let's dive into frustration in our goals. I'm just realizing that I probably could edit this out, but I'm not going to. So we become frustrated when it comes to goals, it comes to goal completion because we have an unrealistic expectation or a visual on how we will get from one point to the end result. And that is why frustration always wins. For example, one of my goals and visions is to have a center of wholeness services for those who are terminally transitioning into everlasting. This is my outcome. This is my vision. But if I just stick with that as my goal, I'm going to continuously live in frustration. Why? Because I'm looking at it from a place of me starting at the beginning of the alphabet of A, and my next one is B, which would be the end result. So I'm just going from A to B. That's it. This is what I see, and this is the end result. But that's completely wrong. I repeat, this is a completely wrong way of viewing your goals. I may as well just throw in my towel right now and call it a fucking day and just let it be a vision that is never created into my life. Might as well go back to working my 9 to 5 job where I'm told set in stone, these are my expectations, these are the goals that I have, and that's it. I'm not shitting on anybody that does that. It's just not for me anymore. So, how do I remove the frustration? How do you remove the frustration from going from A to B like that? I release the expectation that the next step is the end of my vision. In fact, I may be sitting at step A, but the end goal actually sits at, I want to say Z, it might be Z. I say Z all the time. Please don't correct me. My vision of completion for that book in the series is letter Z, which means I need to break it down further. My end result is unrealistic. It is the way I perceive myself getting there that is the key. Every single day. So right now, from the A to B, I've missed all the other letters in the alphabet, which makes the goal unrealistic. It creates an unrealistic self-image of myself and my life. A is having the vision and embodying it. Z is the full completion, but we need to break it down further. So how do we asking ourselves how? The why. Educating ourselves and actively living this vision into reality, creating a flexible timeline. I desire to have this wellness center, but I know nothing about marketing or financial structures. So business courses are part of B, or maybe they're part of C, or maybe they're part of D. I've got my death doula certificate and my Reiki teacher as part of step B. Done. How about community, creating or becoming part of one? Even smaller, dive smaller. We don't break it farther down. We don't break it down enough so that we get really frustrated and we give up so easily when it comes to our goals. I know I have. So if we break it down smaller, what's the name of the company that I'm starting that's going to get me that vision? That's going to create that vision in my life. That's going to create that feeling that I get when I see that vision. How about the why behind the name? How about the business proposal? So the more we focus on the end result, the more frustrated we become. The more we miss out on living in the here and now and enjoy each step along the way. The more we allow ourselves to focus on each step, the less frustrated we become, the less disheartened, the less disheartening we become, the less likely we give up. It's just like having children, having a spouse, employees, bosses. You just continue to break it down further. For example, if I didn't have my death doula certificate and I required that, that was part of my vision, was to be the one actually physically helping them, not just having the center, then I need to look up places in Canada that I can get my death doula certificate at. How much is it going to cost? Maybe I need to financially sit down and go, okay, what's my financial goal in order to get that certificate? All of these little things that are going to get us to that vision. Now, it's important to hold the vision and embody it. And when we embody that energy of the vision, do so while completing those steps. Those steps, when we write them down, is a reminder of the why, of why we're doing this. Even writing your story down, saying, this is my why, and having it somewhere to look at to remind you of it. But even having those little goals is getting you there. So we're getting way off of frustration. I'm teaching you how to, put your vision to life. Maybe that's a workshop I need to do. Let me know if you want to do one. Anyways, so let's lessen that burden of frustration. Let's lessen that weighted feeling. Frustration, like anger, can be something that we can use in a productive way. But when we come from this place that I've just been talking about, it's not productive. It leaves us stuck. It leaves us very tense, and we're not creating with a positive intention. We're not creating in lightness, we're creating in heaviness. So where do you find yourself feeling and expressing frustration, and why? What is required to be changed within you? Within your perspective of self, and therefore a perspective of your partner, your children, and your family? What are you trying to force and control? What patterns are asking you to transmute and change that you have adapted from your lineage? Well, that's all for now, and I will see you in the next episode.